Hello, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. Horror at Heart is almost 2 months old, and it's been fun searching the internet for stories. My interest in telling stories is natural, but the reason I decided to do it is a bit supernatural. When I was 16, I heard a story that stuck with me and made me cautious of what stories I told. But the reasons for that aren't what you're thinking. And it's taken 20 years to finally be okay recounting what happened. Only this time, I have the clarity to tell this as a stark warning. I was at a party, and from the start, it was not a regular party. My friend had an uncle who owned a farm, and he thought it would be cool to host a party out there and be out in the open. He hyped it up with the idea of little supervision and alcohol. I know, underage drinking. Boo, shame on him. But I didn't even drink. It was just available. Anyway, it was close to Halloween, so naturally there was a spooky element to the night. I tried not to walk away from groups of people or stare out at the wheat fields for too long. I can still smell those endless wheat fields. I remember how it taunted my mind with terrifying thoughts that something was going to appear or move. A silhouette moving in darkness, black on black, but just enough to catch your eye and leave you wondering, what was that? Every time I looked for too long, it sent chills down my spine, as if my body was trying to warn me not to stare. To avoid the temptation of staring at the field, I joined a group of people in the barn. They were mostly sitting around and talking about school and their favorite TV shows. I suggested telling scary stories, with the idea that I was going to go first. There was one story in particular I liked to tell, about a small, troll-like creature that stalks its prey for 1 year before killing the person. And if you were lucky, you'd see it before it sees you. But someone else immediately spoke up. It was almost as if they'd been waiting for the opportunity to tell a story. He told us, in his best low, raspy voice, that a kidnapping and murder had happened down the street from this very farm not too long ago. From what the authorities found out, some old man had been kidnapping girls, but it was the manner in which he got rid of the bodies that threw the authorities and families in a downward spiral. He already had one girl in his house, apparently chained up in a makeshift soundproof room. That was when he got a knock at the front door. It was a group of townsfolk. They wanted him to join the search party. This old man, knowing they were talking about the girl he had chained up 50 feet away, claimed that he was too old and it was too late for him to leave his house. They persisted. She's only 18. She needs her medication. Please. The parents are worried. He still told them no, suggesting that maybe she ran away and that she'll come home or call eventually. Then one showed him a picture, hoping to spark sympathy. It was a different girl, a girl with different hair color and face shape entirely. She hadn't come home from school the previous day, and some other members of the community had spotted her walking into the wheat fields. Still, the kidnapper didn't join the search party. Instead, he went inside and slashed the throat of the girl he had chained up, filled a bucket with her blood, and waited for half an hour. Rumors are he drank the girl's blood, hoping it would bring him some type of arcane luck. He would later explain to authorities that he was trying to honor her, whatever that means. When the half hour was up, he went to the wheat fields alone. He searched through the darkness. Not far in the distance, he could hear the search party call for the girl, but to no avail. A short time later, it was he who found her first, far from anyone. The girl was curled up and muttering to herself. Her feet were black and bloody. He picked her up and took her out of the forest back toward the wheat field, all while she muttered nonsense under her breath. She didn't have a clue what was happening to her, let alone that she would be dead before sunrise. When the search party talked to the cops, they made the natural connection and searched the house to find the 2 women not only dead, but dismembered. He was preparing to eat them, to honor them. But he didn't honor them. He destroyed them and their families. And now he rots in prison, waiting for his life to run out. At this point in the story, I understood why the person had wanted to talk first. We were all left in shock, with goosebumps crawling all over our bodies. And in the silence, a blonde girl with light eyes that looked gray in the reflection of the light, spoke up and told us that the story was wrong. She said it had happened, but that some of the details were wrong. She claimed to be one of the girls in the story. Now at this point, any of us could have intervened and called her out, or maybe nervously laughed it off, but this was part of the fun. When telling scary stories, it was part of the culture, so to speak, to allow someone to build on the story, especially if it made it scarier. We all stayed engaged as she told her version of that horrible day. She was walking home from the bus stop when a man came by, a family friend, and told her to say hi to her parents for him. The girl smiled politely and tried to keep walking away, but as the man kept talking, he eventually convinced her to let him drive her home, and that's what he did. Drove her to his house. There, he strangled her until she passed out, and when she woke up, she was chained to a wall in the soundproof room. That part was true. She thought she was in a nightmare, that she had fallen asleep in the back of the bus, and now she was going to wake up having pissed herself. But it wasn't a dream. She remembered that the first thing she saw when she regained consciousness was a giant painting hanging on the wall next to her. It was intricate and far away from her, but she thought it looked like a circle, but with large paint strokes of different colors making up the outline. Inside the circle was the cycle of death and rebirth, all happening around a tower of fire. But the thing that stuck in her mind was the building on fire. It was filled with people. Another thing she could remember clear as day is that the guy chewed his fingernails, leaving them jagged, and spit the fragments of his nails onto the floor. She paused here and made it clear that he never touched her. We asked why he would chain her up, what he wanted. She said he would ask her things about her life, as if he wanted to get to know her. She said it felt like he was making a list of the good and bad things that she had done. But she told him the worst thing that she'd ever done was steal $20 from her mom 4 years ago when she wanted a push-up bra. But it was clear what he also wanted was to talk. A lot. She'd have to sit there and listen to him rant about things, crazy thoughts he had about society, like how he thought society was just a few years from collapse, that he would never get caught for all the things he's done because civilization was about to end, and that's why he sought the beautiful young girls of the neighborhood, to spare them the pain of living without the rule of law and order. She stopped there and looked dazed for a minute, lost in her thoughts. Then she pressed on, saying she didn't want to recount all his terrible notions. As his rants wound down and he didn't ask her questions anymore, she said it felt like it was only moments away from him killing her. But then, a miracle happened. The knock at the front door. She tried to scream, but quickly he covered her mouth, saying that if she made another sound, he would slit her throat then and there. He let go, and she stayed silent. He backed away and closed the door to the room, and she didn't hear anything else. Seconds felt like hours. Then he opened the door again and said he was leaving. He was wearing his pants and boots, and she noted that he had a flashlight at his hip. When he left, she escaped. She chewed on her wrist, gnawing just enough flesh away to tear her hand free from one of the chains. If that wasn't enough, the girl showed us her wrist. There were deep scars on one side. It looked like a wound that had taken years to heal. When someone in our group tried to touch her, she pulled away, but we understood. As I sat there in silence, I admired the way the girl had built on the story. I sort of chuckled. It was perfect. No one else, not even me, wanted to tell a story after her. When I woke up the next morning, I was still thinking about the story, running over the details in my head. So I looked it up. A lot of the details were true. The article had pictures of Roger Fortson, 51, who was arrested for kidnapping and murder. And it had pictures of his last known victims. One of the two whom Roger killed was the same girl that was with us at the party. But she was definitely dead. The kidnapper had slashed her throat and had been preparing to eat pieces of them to honor them, just as the first storyteller had said. Yet there she was, blonde hair, gray eyes, just like in the picture, among us in the barn, claiming she escaped. A horrible, prickly feeling crept up from my stomach. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I looked at the videos of her memorial and pictures that people had shared to commemorate her life. It was her. Every now and then I look up the article, just to make sure it was real. And even though I wasn't the one telling the story that night, I've always been wary about retelling it, because you never know what, or who, a story could conjure.